Welcome to Teen Up, a podcast that digs deeper into the thoughts of teenagers' mind about the wonders of the world.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Isabella.
And I'm Glenn. If you're not, welcome back.
Here is a quick disclaimer. We are two teenagers that are doing our best to research everything. However, we are not experts, so if we offend anyone or say something wrong, we want to apologize in advance. Please email us to tell us what was wrong. Thank you.
Since this season was inspired by Pride Month, this week we are having a deeper dive into sexuality and how people identify themselves.
So, we all heard of the LGBTQ community, but it kind of like expands, and now I think the most inclusive one, it's called the LGBTQIA plus community. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, and asexual. So we will not be getting into every one of these, but we will like briefly explain them a little while later.
Okay.
But first, let's start with how sexuality like kind of works, because you really can't have a definitive idea about it, right? So the first person that came up with the idea of sexuality being a spectrum is Alfred Kinsey. So just a little explain here. So sexuality is not boxes. We know that, right?
Right.
So it's not like you're gay, then you're completely gay, or you're a lesbian, then you're completely lesbian. It's not like you're heterosexual, then you only like, like men or women. It's more like a spectrum. So, you sit in between somewhere, or maybe you are at the extreme, but not a lot of people are at the extreme, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so Alfred Kinsey came up with this scale called the Kinsey scale, and these reports were first published in the Sexual Behavior in Human Male in 1948, so it's quite a while ago. And basically this scale is range from 0 to 6. And for 0, it means that people are completely heterosexual. And for people who are 6, these people who had exclusively same-sex desire and or experiences.
Okay.
And for 1 to 5, it actually stands for, so 1 is predominantly heterosexual, only incidentally homosexual. And 2 is predominantly heterosexual, but more than incidentally homosexual. And 3 is equally heterosexual and homosexual, so kind of like bisexual. And 4 is predominantly homosexual, but more than incidentally heterosexual. And 5 is predominantly homosexual, only incidentally heterosexual. So you get the idea. It's a spectrum. And this spectrum also has another category. It's X, and it stands for asexual, which we will kind of touch base later.
Okay.
We're not gonna like explain it in depth because I think it's kind of complicated, and I am afraid that I'm gonna say something wrong. So we're not gonna talk about that.
Okay.
So for the Kinsey scale, basically these people like go to like a doctor, and the doctor will like ask them some questions and like have an interview and that kind of stuff. And after this like interview by the psychologist, these people will like assign them to like one category. So it's not really like what you identify as. It's more like what the doctor assigns you.
Okay. Wait, so this is the doctor assigns it instead of like you identifying yourself as something?
Yeah, so it kind of like is one of the criticism of this method of like categorizing. And it's because like some people can't really be put into boxes,
Right.
And you say it's a spectrum, but it kind of like little just two big boxes chopped into little boxes in a sense.
Right.
And so people weren't really like satisfied with this categorization, but we have to know that it's from the 1940s. And at that time, this idea of sexuality is really just like starting, and it's very new, you know, that kind of stuff. So another kind of like organizing or like categorization is called the Klein Sexual Orientation Grid.
Okay.
So in 1978, Fritz Klein published the bisexual option. So in this publishment, he kind of like create this grid that asks people to rate 7 aspects of sexual orientation identity from 1 to 7.
Okay.
And with 1 being heterosexual only and 1 being homosexual only. So it's like 0 to 6, but it's 1 to 7 now.
Okay.
The 7 aspects are sexual attraction, sexual behavior, sexual fantasies, emotional preference, social preference, and heterosexual/homosexual lifestyle, and self-identification. So people like rate themselves from 1 to 7 in these 7 categories. And the survey or like this grid also asks for like different time frames. So it has like current, past, and like future. So current means like in the past 12 months, and past is like before that, and future is kind of like your ideal situation. So for example, your ideal sexual attraction, like ideal sexual behavior, that kind of stuff.
What do you mean? I'm not sure I'm getting this.
So it's like for current, it's pretty simple, right? It's like what you currently think you are on like the scale of 1 to 7. And for like this future box, it's like how you see yourselves in the future, like like how your relationship with maybe your partner will be like, and how do you rate that on this scale. Yeah. So like I talked about, there's like another thing called asexual, right? So to explain, asexual basically means that individuals who don't experience sexual attraction to others of any gender.
Okay.
But it's kind of like complicated because it has like different level of not having sexual attraction.
So is like different level, different type of asexuals?
Yes, and they have another spectrum, but we will not be getting into that.
Okay.
But it basically means that some people have very little attractions to others, and some have none. And both can be like identified as asexual.
Okay.
This other matrix called Storm's Sexuality Axis, which is promoted by Michael Storms, and because he wants to better incorporate asexuality and differentiate it from bisexuality in these like sexuality models. So he used like x-axis and y-axis, with x-axis corresponding to homosexuality and the y-axis to heterosexuality. And a 0 value along either axis would correspond to no orientation in that direction. And 0 values along both axes would indicate total asexuality. Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of like if you're at 0 and 0, which is where it kind of like crosses, then you are like completely asexual.
Okay.
And, you know, it kind of like represents this sexual spectrums a little bit better by kind of like rating you how homosexual you are and how heterosexual you are.
Okay.
And you know, you have like a point or something on this graph. Anyway, it's super mathy and stuff.
Okay.
I think a big problem with 3 of these, like all 3 of these kind of like graph or categorization, is that it kind of is still playing in this gender binary idea, you know, like men and women like people only have like 2 different genders, and you're
okay.
either like not like either, but you're like men or you like woman, but sometimes it's more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we have like so many new terms that people identify us.
Mm-hmm.
So after the break, we're going to be exploring more in these terms.
Welcome back. Now we're going to explain some of the terms of sexuality.
Okay, I feel like these terms are used quite frequently in TV shows these days and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is fluid, which is pretty straightforward. Like water is like a fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And, it means that sexuality or like sexual attraction, it can like change over time and it depends on the situation that you're in.
Okay, that's interesting.
So for example, the psychiatrist Alfred Kinsey, he started out as like 1 or 2 on his spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
In later lives, he kind of like moved to 3 or 4. I think that's what I saw when I'm researching. So it kind of captures the idea that your sexuality is fluid and you can like
change over time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the next one is asexual, which I kind of talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that individuals who don't experience sexual attractions to others of any gender,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean completely no attraction,
Right.
It's another whole nother
conversation.
Yeah. The next one is bisexual. So it means that a sexual orientation that describes those who experience sexual or romantic attractions to people of more than one gender.
Mm-hmm.
So in their scale, it's like a person who is attracted to both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And related to bisexual is bicurious, which I think is kind of like a very like used a lot. Like I feel like this word is used quite a lot recently.
Mm-hmm.
And it refers to people who are questioning or exploring bisexuality or like sexuality in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically means that these people are curious about their sexuality and like what their sexual orientation or sexual attraction are.
Mm-hmm.
And like whether it's like to the same or different genders.
Mm-hmm. So this is actually the first time that I'm hearing this term bicurious.
Oh, really?
Right. A lot of these terms that you're going to talk about, I actually haven't seen.
Yeah, these are more weird. Not like weird. I shouldn't say weird, but it's like not being said a lot.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's just the environment that I live in is not very like, I wouldn't say open about it. It's just we don't talk about this very much. So yeah, a lot of these terms are still very new to me, and I'm just understanding this right now. It's really interesting.
Yeah, okay. So the next one, this I find kind of interesting. It's called androsexual.
Mm-hmm.
And it refers to people who are attracted to masculinity. So it kind of like jumps out of the idea of, like gay, lesbian, like this
Mm-hmm.
traditional idea. It's more like a person who is attracted to the masculinity. So it could be any gender who has this quality. Like these people will be attracted to them.
Mm-hmm.
You get the idea?
Right. So it could be like just anyone who acts more masculine,
Mm-hmm.
and that would fit as like masculinity.
Yeah.
Okay. But like, how would you define this masculinity?
I guess it's kind of like how you would understand it because like a lot of times these terms are people who identify themselves as.
Oh, true.
So it's like how that person defines masculinity, I'd say.
Right. Okay.
So the opposite of that is gynosexual.
Mm-hmm.
It basically means that people who are attracted to femininity, and it basically is like the same idea, but rather than masculinity is femininity,
Mm-hmm.
or like this image of women, females, that kind of attraction. regardless of how the like actual gender that person is, like the biological gender. So another one, it's on the asexual spectrum that I briefly mentioned earlier. It's called demisexual.
Okay.
And it basically means that people who are only attracted to others under specific circumstances, such as after building a romantic or emotional relationship. So kind of like how you are already like having, like it basically means that you are only attracted to people who already has like a relationship with you, whether it's romantic or not. Okay, next one is gray sexual.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
So about the demisexual, demisexual, it's just basically that. Could you say that you don't like casual hookups
I mean,
because you don't have like a relationship with this person? You just basically saw this person at a bar and then, you know.
I feel like it could be, I mean, it really comes down to how you identify yourself, right?
True.
And it's, I feel like it's just nice to have like this term or like this way of identifying. But maybe like it's more on, because it's on the asexual spectrum. So to me, at least, I feel like it's more like people who are not normally attracted to other people sexually. Like these people are only attracted to maybe like their close friends, or like people who they are very close with, not necessarily friends, you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Or like maybe they need a romantic relationship before they have this kind of like sexual attraction. Okay, so the next one is gray sexual. And as it might give it away in the name, it's a gray area on the sexuality spectrum for people who don't like completely identify as asexual or aromantic, which is like kind of like the same idea.
Okay.
And these people like experience some sexual attraction or desire, but not as frequently as those who identify as like, you know, bisexual, homosexual, heterosexual, you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it kind of is on the asexual spectrum.
Okay. This is very confusing. Okay.
Yeah, it is confusing to me as well. So we are kind of done with the asexual spectrum. The next one we have, yeah, we still have a few. The next one we have is pansexual.
Okay.
So basically, like pan, you know, not you, but it's like everything, you know, like all over the spectrum. And it means that these people can experience sexual or emotional attraction to any person regardless of the person's like gender or sex or their sexuality. You know, it's just like basically saying that as long as it's somebody you like.
Okay.
And the next one is monosexual. So for people who are completely heterosexual or completely homosexual, they are also in this category, like monosexual. It basically means that these people, like monosexual, like people who identify as monosexual, they are only attracted to one gender and one gender only.
So it's the complete opposite of pansexual?
I mean, you could say that, but yeah, it is kind of like that.
Okay.
So somewhere in between monosexual and pansexual, we have polysexual, which kind of in its name means that you can be attracted to many genders. But the special thing about it is that polysexual also include bisexual, pansexual, omnisexual, and like many others.
Wait, I don't quite understand. What is it? How is it different from pansexual then?
I'd say it's like a more broad term.
Okay.
Just it's saying that you are attracted to many sexualities, but like you are attracted to many genders, but not specifying how many or which one.
Okay.
So the last one is homosexual. This one is fun.
Okay.
And this term is used to refer to those who reject sexuality labels or don't identify them with any of them.
Oh, wow.
So these people are saying none of that matters. And it's all just some terms and they don't believe that, basically.
I mean, that makes sense because, like, like trying to identify yourself, I guess it's a really long and very tiresome process to, try to find out who you are. So I guess sometimes it's easier to just, call yourself homosexual and not like, give people a place to put you in, sort of, right?
I mean, it's kind of like the society is more accepting now, and you don't really need to like identify as each one of these sexualities. But I do feel like we still have a lot to discuss that we don't have time to do it in this episode, including like romantic attraction, or like I said, like the asexual spectrum, and like aesthetic attraction, like, and also like gender, which is like another big thing in this topic.
Right.
And I feel like it's just a very complicated topic that no one really fully understands it.
And it is like a very still evolving thing, and there's like really no right or wrong and no way to define all of this because this community is still growing and everyone's still trying to understand each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe like the whole thing is fluid, like
Right.
like you can change and these ideas can change over time, and like we just cover only a little bit of this topic today, and we just tried our best to understand these ideas.
So if we offend anyone throughout this episode or like miss out something that we're not doing right, please tell us. We are very willing to learn more about this. And
thank you for listening to this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and share our channel.
Also, comment down below if you have any thoughts. You could click on the bell to get notified when we upload a new video as well.
Thank you and bye.